Development hell is where dreams go to die. If you're unfamiliar with the term, it's essentially limbo for media projects in which they sit and remain unfinished, or have no hope of progressing any further. There have been multiple cases in the video game industry in which a highly anticipated or hyped title has fallen into development hell. Some, like Cyberpunk 2077, seem to be fighting their way out of development hell, and other titles like Fortress 2 have proof that climbing out of this limbo isn't impossible. Unfortunately for many other titles, that may not ever be a reality. So today, we're mourning our losses with our list of the top 10 hyped video games that are stuck in development hell. And a few of them have just not gotten out either. Let's jump in. At number 10, HELLRAID. Remember Dead Island? Well, the developers behind that title, Techland, were set to create another zombie-filled video game by the name of HELLRAID, but it never saw the light of day. Back in 2014, a trailer for the game was shown off at E3, and it had some pretty serious gothic medieval tones, mixed in with some Dark Souls vibes, but in first person. Available for single player or co-op, the trailer boasted 3 different modes: story, mission, and arena, with a skill tree, character customization, all that fun RPG stuff. The whole premise was that you'd be fighting back demons and zombies to prevent an invasion from coming out of the gates of hell. The release date of 2015 was inevitably pushed back because of Techland. They dropped everything they were doing in order to work on Dying Light. It's never been confirmed whether or not HELLRAID will be released, and its current status is on hold. Up next, number 9, Prey 2. Prey 2's development hell story is one of the only ones on this list that actually has a happy ending. For those of you who have followed the Prey 2 story, which was meant to be a sequel to the 2006 Prey title, was eventually cancelled, but Bethesda would later revamp the series with a new Prey release in 2017 that took the series in a brand new direction. But back in 2006 though, Prey 2 was announced by devs Human Head Studios. The actual development didn't begin until 2009 though, with Bethesda only formally announcing the title in 2011, revealing that the game would go from a first-person shooter to more of an open world. Eventually Bethesda cancelled it in 2014, and in 2016 Bethesda would announce that the new Prey game was being developed by a different developer, Arcane, still exploring different themes as the original title, but all that work that had been previously done by Human Head Studios was completely trashed. Up next, number 8, Sonic X-TREME. Sonic X-TREME was in development hell for only a handful of years, 1994 to 1997. At the time, it was really hyped. It was meant to be the first fully 3D Sonic game, and the first to debut on the Sega Saturn console. Now for context, there was a lot of crap going on at Sega after the first Sonic game was released for the Genesis in 1991. There was a lot of animosity between the Sega factions in Japan and America, and while the Japanese staff were working on Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, the Americans were working on Sonic Spinball. Bit of a quality difference there. By the time 1994 came around, different creative heads at the Sega Technical Institute and over at Sega in Japan were still clashing, and the development for the Sonic X-TREME game was constantly shifted. The Sega Saturn was also becoming a priority over Genesis games, and the development that had been previously worked on for the Genesis soon became void. Because of all of these issues, the game ended up being worked on by 2 different development teams with 2 different game engines, and you can imagine how well that went. In 1996, a demo game of the title was released, but key members on both development teams became ill, crippling both teams' efforts, and Sega announced in 1997 that the title was cancelled. Sonic Adventure for the Dreamcast would become the first full Sonic 3D game. Moving on to number 7, Half-Life 3. Do you really think that a Half-Life 3 will ever be a thing? Likely not, but there are still a few committed fans out there who hold hope. Back in 2008, concept art for Half-Life 2 Episode 3 surfaced, and rumor had it that Valve was working on creating a dev character for the game. From then on out, there was a lot of confusion about whether Valve would be releasing Episode 3, or a brand new Half-Life title game overall, a third for the series. Now between 2016 and 2017, 3 of the key writers for Half-Life, as well as the Portal series, left Valve, and many critics saw this as a confirmation that the third game would never happen. And in 2017, one of those writers, Mark Laidlaw, published a short story online that plays as a Half-Life fanfic, something that many speculated was actually the plot for the Episode 3 game that never came into existence. It's never been flat out confirmed that Half-Life 3 is in the works, nor has it been denied, but many fans have given up on the hope for it in the meantime. And at number 6, Dead Island 2. After 2011's Dead Island zombie video game was released, there was talk that a sequel was in the works, but despite being announced at E3 in 2014, it never came. At the time, the game was promised to take place in California, which had been quarantined due to an outbreak of the zombie virus from the first game. The developers who had worked on the first title, Techland, yet again, ended up dropping out because of Dying Light. From there, Yager Development took over, but they also dropped the game, due to Yager and publisher Deep Silver having different views on the game's direction. This also led to Yager filing a lawsuit for insolvency in 2015, and developers Sumo Digital then picked up the pieces back in 2016, and for the next 2 years, announcements were constantly made that the game was still in the works. A release date has officially been announced for December 31st, 2019, but at this point, who knows if it'll stick. In our number 5 spot, Crackdown 3. Crackdown 3 has had a long history of being in development. Back in 2015, Microsoft announced Dave Jones as the creative director behind the new Crackdown game, which would be making use of a new cloud gaming technology called CloudGen. This is when things got a little confusing. Later, that CloudGen tech would be later abandoned, and Jones would say that he was only a consultant on the game, stating, I quote, "I wasn't doing the development." By 2017, Jones was completely removed from the project altogether, with devs Epic Games now taking over. In between those 2 years though, Microsoft had contracted a bunch of different studios to contribute to the game. Then in 2018 at E3, a new Crackdown 3 footage trailer was shown, starring Terry Crews. The game's release date has been pushed back yet again to early 2019, apparently to give it a more favorable launch window. Microsoft has delayed the game numerous times as well, and rumor has it that the latest delay is reportedly the last time the company will be willing to push the title. In our number 4 spot, Routine. Back in 2012, it was announced that an indie space horror title called Routine would be coming out in 2013. The original trailer that was released depicted the player character wandering around a desolate space station, all while hiding from homicidal robots and collecting resources. It had some serious alien vibes, and while the development was slow, every now and then the devs behind it, Lunar Software, would release updates. Gameplay footage was released in the summer of 2013, and it looked incredibly promising. Then in 2014, the devs went quiet for 6 months before releasing an update that said the game was still in development. And then again, in 2015, they announced that they were removing placeholder artwork, tweaking and polishing. Then, almost a full year went past before devs made a new statement about the game, saying, I quote, "Routine is our first project as a team, and while we do have some previous experience individually, this has been a huge undertaking where we have clearly underestimated a lot of the workload. We are happy with everything we've learned, and we are still completely committed to releasing something that we are all proud of, and hopefully something that you all enjoy." Halloween of 2016 brought new updates, along with a release date and a really good-looking new trailer, announcing its release for March of 2017, but that didn't work out either, with the devs announcing that they were working through issues with the game's multiple endings. And for all of 2017, it was just radio silence from them. The last statement concerning the game was a bit vague. It was appreciative towards fans still remembering that Routine was still in the works, but also admitted that the devs have had their own personal issues throughout the past recent while. For now, they plan on remaining silent until the game is 99% complete, not to make anyone get their hopes up. In our number 3 spot, Beyond Good and Evil 2. There are a lot of people out there who have high hopes for Beyond Good and Evil 2. The game, a sequel to the early 2000s Ubisoft cult classic, has been in the works now for over a decade. Rumors have been flying around for years. The sequel, which initially had been shut down because of the lack of commercial success for the first game, was rumored to be in the works in 2007, and then in 2009 a leaked trailer appeared online. At the 2017 E3, a new cinematic trailer was released for the game, promising that the game was now out of development hell and moving forward. The 2018 E3 was more promising. We got to see some gameplay footage, which looks stunning. But the devs also announced a new initiative with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's collaborative online community that encouraged users to submit and create art assets for the game to use in its massive open world, and that had some people a little skeptical. Speaking of skeptical, a lot of people feel like it still won't see the light of day, but the latest hype around it at least seems more promising than radio silence. And our number 2 spot, Star Citizen. It's really hard to confirm or deny whether Star Citizen is in development hell. Kinda seems likely though. One thing for sure though is that the game is seemingly nowhere near a release date. Star Citizen is a PC title from developers Cloud Imperium Games. It's a massive multiplayer game that so far has been funded by a Kickstarter campaign. Boasting space exploration, trade, and combat, the game was originally planned for 2014, but since has been delayed because of how massive an undertaking it's been, along with the addition of more and more game features. In the meantime, the developers have released a single-player story-driven game set in the same universe, called Squadron 42. Regardless, if the game is ever completed and released, it'll be absolutely mind-blowing. And while it seems hopeful, the immensity of detail that's going into the game means that the game probably won't see the light of day for at least a couple years down the road from now. Still promising, but And finally, in our number 1 spot, Agent. Agent is one of Rockstar's most highly anticipated titles that fans of the developer have been begging for a long time. It was a stealth action game that was meant to be an exclusive for the PlayStation, set in the 70s during the Cold War. According to Rockstar, it would take players into, I quote, "the world of counterintelligence, espionage, and political assassinations." Now, whether or not the game is still in the works is a mystery, and most involved at Sony or Rockstar defer questions about it when asked. The last official news about the game was that Take-Two Interactive had re-registered trademarks for it in 2013, In 2017, concept art was allegedly leaked online along with concept art for a second Bully game, although it was never confirmed if this concept art was actually real or not. Alright, there we have it friends, which of these games do you have high hopes for still? And what other games in development hell have been making you a sad panda? Let us know in those comments below. If you dug this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and be sure to check out the playlist that's currently flashing on your screen for more gaming content. In the meantime though, thanks for watching everybody. I'll catch you all in the next video.